Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He comes to us from the UK. His name is Thomas Hobbs, Hobbs. He reached out to me about one of his articles, which after reading through it, I was like, oh, yeah, I know some of the people involved in this article. And if you're seeing this on Rockfin or X, you will see the title and the cover with the burning pentagram, searching for mindfulness among satanic spirits. To see the light, you need to turn to the dark side first. I think it's kind of a timely article. A lot of these people who are in the elite do these talk to spirits. They're their friends. They're not. They don't see them in the context of kind of the Christian church. But it is interesting. This article was written before some of the stuff that I wrote about in my book, Global Death Cult, happened, which we can talk more about that. But for some reason, that book it's my most highest selling book. Like I wrote that 2021, but I think some of the information in there must have come to the surface or something having to do with 764 or some of these other occult groups. Like I was on a show in Russia about it. But anyway, Thomas can talk more about that. So Thomas Hobbs, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
For people who haven't heard your name here in the States or maybe aren't familiar with you, maybe you could talk a little bit about your background. I know I was trying to kind of get a grip of all the articles you've written. You've written on stuff here in the West Coast Jazz. But maybe you can just talk about all the work you've done and then leading up to publishing Searching for Mindfulness Among Satanic Spirits.
Yeah, so I'm a freelance culture, music, film journalist based in the UK. I've been doing this now approaching 15 years actually. I come from a humble working class background. I guess I'm most known for probably writing about music. So I've interviewed everybody from Nas to John Carpenter to John Cale from the Velvet Underground. So yeah, done lots of interviews with big musicians, but I think my bread and butter, the features that I really enjoy writing the most are the ones where I can uncover something a little strange, a little bit weird, that's a little bit sort of out of range for the average person, or they're not aware that it's going on, and I can kind of bring it to the surface. So over the years, I've done that on everything from tracking down serial killer fandoms and talking to people that are fandoms like Nicki Minaj or Harry Styles have fandoms, but for killers. That was a long read I wrote about 7 years ago. I've written long reads on everything from that to finding real life roller coaster designers and talking to them about how the video game Roller Coaster Tycoon changed their lives. So I'm always looking for like fresh angles, like stories that will resonate, because they make you see life from a slightly different angle.
This is one of them. I mean, so you actually reached out to E.A. Coetting, or Eric Coetting was what you call him, but I think Bold was the Become a Living God or something like that was his website, right?
Yeah, so to tell you the background with this one, so just to be honest with you, I just remember being on my sofa, quite stoned, watching the movie Hereditary, which is obviously a great horror movie, one of the best horrors of the last 10 years. And it just got me thinking, like, obviously the fundamental concept of that movie is that there's these like middle class white suburbanites, and they secretly worship Payman, and they secretly do these rituals that are hidden from kind of public view, right? So it got me thinking, does this happen in real life? And if it does happen in real life, what kind of scale does it happen? Because most people would just think of that as, a Rosemary's Baby-esque plot line in a film. But I thought, I had this sense that, I wouldn't be surprised if this is really happening and it's more widespread than people think. So, I went down the rabbit hole of Google and started to find these different websites where essentially, for you could explain whatever problem or ailment you're having in life, and they call themselves professional demon summoners would then say, right, I know just the spirit for you. You need to speak to Beelzebub, or you need to speak to Payman. and I'm going to give you a one-on-one session where I introduce you to him, and you're going to pay $250 to $300 an hour for the experience. So through that, I found, found the website, referenced throughout the article, and kind of got to know some of their main practitioners, some of their main demon summoners, and interviewed them. And I thought this was an opportunity to show that, like, outrageous plot lines and horror movies that you don't think could ever be real can be real, but also just to show people that, the same way you might go to therapy and, try and get over a trauma in your life. There's people who see this on par with that. They genuinely believe that by doing these sessions with these professional demon summoners, it's brought them peace. It's brought them money. It's brought them love. So people really are invested in these sessions. They really do believe they make a difference. And I think, that in itself, I found really fascinating, because I just think, the average person would be shocked to think that this even goes on. I think they're in their head, they look at it as a kind of David Lynch-esque kind of strange plot device. But I guess I wanted to make it clear that, that's not the case, but also kind of give people a bit of a history lesson too, about how just the idea of what a demon represents is kind of changed and evolved from era to era, going back thousands and thousands of years. So it was important for me to put that historical context in there as well.
Right. It's like the entities. So these people view them as entities, like maybe a Christian would call them demons. But like these guys are doing, and he's making money too, right? Like it's international in scope too, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. I kind of feel like with this article, I only really just scratched the surface. Like, I've subsequently found out that these types of communities exist in the UK. They exist in Canada. They exist in. I found evidence of one in France. So there's evidence that maybe your neighbor right now is talking to a professional demon summoner and communicating with payment or whoever or whatever it is, and getting results from it, or so they think. So I just think it's fascinating that at this period, when I wrote the article, I think it's about 4 years old, it might even be older, but at that point, it was Trump's first term in office, and there's obviously a lot of kind of lot of doom-ridden headlines about how World War III was on the horizon, and coronavirus had just happened, and people were having an existential crisis because of that. So I think it was a timely time to write it, because it was like at that point, a lot of people were in such a dark place that the idea of turning to the dark arts maybe made more sense to them than it would have maybe even like 2-3 years prior to that. I think a lot of people were starting to feel like the world was quite a godless place at the time, which might explain the kind of rise of these types of surfaces. But I thought it would be really interesting to get people to see from the perspective of the demon summoners. My work is always about making you see through the eyes of somebody who you've never really considered their point of view before. And I think with this article, hopefully, that I could achieve that.
But you also talked to a couple of academics, like, why is this happening? Like, this is like the past demon stuff. But you talked to contemporary, intellectuals about this phenomenon, which is really real, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was important to get the historical perspective, but also that balance, because obviously, there's another side to this. There's people who just think this is nonsense, like this is just people kind of imagining things and paying $300 for in the process. But it is real. Like, I'm not saying it's real. Like, I 100% believe that I can have a conversation with payment, and I'm going to wake up in this 30K in my bank account. But it is real that these services exist and people get gratification out of them. There's people, I can't name names, but I know, based on what the people I interviewed told me, quite high network, famous individuals that apparently use these services. So I think that to me was quite eye-opening, because I think that cliche, that idea in pop culture that, you know, celebrities worship the devil is often something that people, you know, think of as like pure conspiracy. But there is evidence that like high net worth individuals are using these services. I think I described it in the article as like satanic goop, and goop is obviously Gwyneth Paltrow's lifestyle website. And in a way, it kind of felt like that a bit to me. You know, people could say, "Oh, I'm having a real crisis at the moment, getting a lot of anxiety. You know, I can't talk to women." Well, they claim that you know, Beelzebub will give you the answers to cure that. He'll give you the confidence that where human psychiatry fails, demonic psychiatry can kind of fill the gap, so to speak.
Right, and these are like the classic old names of demonology: Lilith, Beelzebub, Azazel. And this guy literally was Pazuzu, right? That's the demon from
Yeah.
The Exorcist. So these are
Do you know what's funny? Just to
No.
interject, I actually interviewed the actress that played Pazuzu in the original Exorcist. A woman
Who
called
played who? What was her name?
Eileen Dietz, she's called. So she basically, you know, when you see the flash of Pazuzu's face,
Yes,
that's
yeah.
her, and that was quite fascinating. That was a fascinating thing. But I guess it just, you know, that lure of like demonic entities in Hollywood. I find it just fascinating that like there is truth to some of it. You know, like actually this plot device in a movie like Hereditary isn't just purely imagination. Like there really are real people in suburbia who are taking 1 hour Skype calls with demon summoners and claiming to talk to spirits. You know, I had the interviewees show me photos of like faces emanating from smoke. Now I can't tell if that was Photoshop or trickery, but they really believed what they were saying, you know, and they spoke with a kind of lot of conviction, and I think that I found really interesting.
I did a show on the Hosanna Church where they were in a church summoning demons, and literally thought that like these people were taking on demonic faces. Like that's like they literally thought they were being transformed. Whether that's happening or not is another question, but this stuff is real, man. B.A. Coetting, you wrote this article before Daniel Hussein. Can you tell? I don't know if you know this story, but
no, I'll be honest with you. I'm not fully up to it. Refresh my memory.
Daniel Hussein was a member of the Become a Living God. He was that, and in I think 2020, he made a pact with this demon named Rosifal something, and he made a blood pact, and he's known as the lottery killer in the UK because this pact, through Become a Living God, which is run by E.A. Coetting, this pact was supposed to have him win the lottery. He went out and killed 2 people. The names were, this happened in June 2020. Biba Henry and Nicole Smallwood were killed in Friant Country Park in London.
This was the guy in Wembley, wasn't it? Yeah. In Wembley in London. I think I remember it. I remember hearing about that.
Northwest London or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that just shows the sort of dangers involved in this. And I tried to get that put into the piece. You know,
it resulted in, I think something happened to E.A. Coetting. So he they shut down his website, but he's also a member of the Order of Nine Angles. So you literally interviewed a guy who's an ONNA member.
Which is he was a fascinating guy. Like I couldn't tell. I felt like he was kind of playing this sort of audacious role, like in his head. It felt like he was an actor in a Hammer horror movie. You know, he was a little bit exaggerated with the things that he said. Whereas, you know, the other interviewees in the piece were just like us now, just everyday people, but they did this extraordinary job for a living. Whereas he, you know, you could tell that he had a reputation and enjoyed kind of living up to it dramatically, so to speak. So
he's been around for a long time, man.
Yeah,
I was telling you in the pre-show, I was in an interview with him in 2010. 2010. I can't believe that, 15 years ago. Yeah, I didn't know he was an member of the Order of Nine Angles at that time. What?
I must admit, I must admit, some of the things he said, I took with a pinch of salt. Like I didn't, I did wonder at points whether I was being had on, but what the one thing that sort of aligned all of the demon summoners that I spoke to, all of them told me that they suffered from trauma when they were growing up and when they were kids. All of them told me that, whether or not that was abuse or watching someone die at a young age. And I found that interesting as a pattern, like I'm not saying that this is purely a cause and effect situation, but I tried to get those little details in the piece as well, so like the reader could make up their own mind. I think the piece is traveled really far, and it just fascinates me that I still get emails about it to this day, and I think it's because there is a kernel of truth to it. I remember years ago, and your listeners can Google this. I wrote a long read for Wired magazine, all about MK Ultra and how this idea that people are under mind control. Well, if you really look, there's a kernel of truth to that. This was a real program set up by the US government to test the boundaries of mind control. So I think the conspiracies where there is that kernel of truth are always the most interesting to me.
What's the title of that one you did?
The
MK Ultra one.
I can actually look at it right now. Hold on. It's called "The Conspiracy Theorists Convinced Celebrities Are Under Mind Control."
Okay, I got it right there.
For Wired, yeah, and again, just doing the research for that, you'd think some of the things I wrote in it were kind of, fictitious. The CIA experimenting on dogs so that they could be controlled with a remote control, but these things really did happen. So I think just like that with this piece on the kind of satanic spirits, like I just kind of wanted to show people that like these things that you might think are fantastical really could be going on. Your neighbor could be indulging in them. They're more kind of normal than you expect. And I've got to be honest with you, like my my wife's family, they're like devout Christians, and I remember at the time I was living with them because we were saving money to try and buy a house, and the only way we could do it, like a lot of people my generation, was moving with the in-laws and just like not go out for 2 years. And I remember when I wrote this article, they were really like didn't agree with it, put it that way. They were like, what, do you really have to write this? Do you really have to expose this? It was kind of controversial, but I think it's important to always like expose those kind of truths that are just hidden just under the surface.
Right. So this is like crazy. I mean, this whole thing, when those two women got killed by this guy who's associated with Yake wedding, there was like a vigil that Sadiq Khan attended. Some of these other kind of
yeah. Like now you've said it sparks. I remember, because I remember at the time I got approached to speak about it because somebody had obviously seen that I'd written about the community a few years before, but I turned it down out of respect for the families and the victims, and I didn't want to kind of trivialize it. But I do feel like my piece does show balance. It does hint that there is a lot of mental health problems behind some of the people who really indulge in this stuff. There is a dark side, but some of the people were so convincing to me. Like some of the interviewees were very convincing to me, to the point where, if you were to put a gun to my head right now and tell me what I believed, I'd probably say, to a degree, maybe these people were fantasists on some level, but equally, I wouldn't play around with this stuff. So I must feel like on some level, even subconsciously, I must feel like maybe there is some truth here. I've just to talk to you a bit about my background. I lost my my dad when I was real young, when I was 4 years old. I actually watched him die, and I grew up in a household where there were lots of paranormal activity, lots of strange things happening. So I'm not shut off to this idea of there being this kind of realm of spirits, or there being this kind of afterlife. So I think that's why when you read my writing, I'm not condescending. A lot of journalists maybe would approach this subject purely from condescension, you know what I mean? So, but for me, it was very important this piece, and hopefully your readers agree, your listeners agree, sorry, that, you know, it had balance. It considered all sides, like, and maybe just left people thinking, who knows, maybe there could be some truth in this. Yeah.
I don't think it will become a living God is even online anymore. So I think they shut that
that's
down.
crazy. Well, you know what? I remember going on there. I remember I had an account on there, just obviously through the research of this piece. And I remember like some of the posts on there were just it was just things like, I remember there was one guy, I keep getting rejected by women. You know, I'm not happy. Like, I want to meet my life partner. I can't remember the demon that the moderators set him up with for a session, but I remember then seeing a follow-up post where he was like talking about all the great results he'd had and how he'd suddenly met somebody. But I guess the thing here is, in a way, you know, obviously Christianity, you've got, in America in particular, you've got certain people who believe, you know, if you join their church, suddenly, you know, tens of thousands of dollars are going to start coming your way. Prosperity, Christianity, you know, all that type of stuff. There is a kind of element of that here, but obviously from the demonic side, like the common thread seemed to be a lot of the people saying suddenly money just arrived in their bank account. Suddenly they got their dream job, you know, suddenly things started to fall into shape with them. And I just thought that was interesting because there's lots of parallels with, you know, maybe somebody like a Joel Osteen and what they claim, they promised they could bring. It's almost like the polar opposite of it. Do you know what I mean? But there's similarities too.
Yeah, I see that their Bolg is still online, or it's back online. That's the same woman that you had on. Orly Stewart is on there.
Yeah. She was interesting. And you know, I've written about the Church of Satan before. I remember years ago. I think it's still online. I'll try and dig out a link for you for a website called Refinery 29, where I interviewed female Satanists who claimed like the Church of Satan had empowered them and was this kind of feminist organization. So, you know, I thought it was really important with this piece too to have strong female voices in there. But yeah, you know, I think about this article a lot. You know, like, even though I wrote it a long time ago, a lot of the things that the interviewee said to me just stick. They stick, and I always remember. I can't remember the guy's name. I think it was somebody. I forget the guy's name, but he said to me, "Anytime you want to be introduced to payment, I'll do it for free." And he kept that offer open.
Demon, right? That's the demon.
Yeah, Payman is an ancient demon, and this guy claimed he could introduce me to him whenever. He said to me, "You know, he will make you the biggest journalist in the world," and all this crazy stuff. I was like, "Sure, man, I'm good. Like, don't worry." And, and I just always remember that offer. Like, I always think, like, in an alternate universe, maybe I accept it, and then, like, you know, a Roman Polanski-esque horror movie unfolds.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I what's interesting is Bolg is now, their office is in Austin, Texas. Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Well, it just shows you also, like, there is the, you know, the potential for this all to be really commercialized.
This is commercialized. Bolg is commercialized. Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah. And it has become so much more so in the years since the article. And that's kind of what I wanted to hint at. That, you know, it won't be long until capitalism sort of like amplifies all of this and dials it up a notch. You know, there's the line in there from the academic at NYU who says, "Who's to say one day, you know, when you open your newspaper, there won't be a demon for each month that we can look at, and you're like a star sign." Do you know what I mean?
There probably is for some of these people's lives, you know, that we don't see. They may not be in a massive newspaper, but these guys are connected, and they're international, and it just shows you all this stuff. This guy Coetting it's not his real name, but
it is. And what? Sorry, Karen.
Daniel Hussein was on this site, the Bolg site, like hours before he committed the murders. And then he went and spent 162 pounds on lottery tickets, but won nothing. So he really thought it was going to pay off.
Yeah. It's crazy. People, when they're vulnerable, when they're low, they want to believe in the fantastical. And that's the sad thing about this. You know, like, maybe some people have been misled. And You know, it's a really dark, tragic case. And I must admit, when I was trolling through the site, like I did feel like I did sense that some people might have been exploited, but I just go back to the interviews, and the people, some of the people felt really credible. Some of the demon summoners felt credible. You know, they really felt like everyday people who were having these fantastical experiences. But as I said to you before, as much as you know, my logic tells me this can't be true, I wouldn't fuck around with this stuff. You know, you wouldn't catch me ever like wanting to go through the rituals to sort of communicate with Pizzazu. Like that I'm happy to watch it on the movie screen, you know.
Yeah, he got 31 years. Who's saying so? He's
It's
not getting
crazy.
out. Yeah. The judge in
Yeah.
2021 said, "You committed these vicious attacks. You did it to kill. You did it for money in a misguided pursuit of power. This was a calculated and deliberate course of conduct, planned and carried out with precision. Bizarre though the
Mm.
pact with the devil may appear to others, this was your belief system, your own commitment to the murder of innocent women." Yeah. So,
Yeah. It's a fascinating case. I think it shows how the internet has so many kind of
yeah.
subcultures and
Yes.
communities which have that potential to lead people down the wrong path, or
One
you
of
know,
the
give them
interesting
false hope.
other aspects, because I've studied the Daniel Hussein case, is that it was kind of in conformance with O9A ideology or doctrines. Like he was going to plan the attacks but get away with it. So he wanted to like go find somebody
Mm.
random and kill them and get away with it. He wasn't a very good criminal because they had him on CCTV buying all the implements he used to commit the
Yeah.
attack. And they're like, "Who's that guy buying a knife?" And that's how he got
Yeah, and but you know, I just wouldn't be surprised though if there's dozens and dozens more of
right.
uh, becoming a living god-esque communities right
I
now. So
wouldn't.
who's to
There
say?
are cells of all
Yeah,
these O9A all
there
over the
really
world.
are.
Yeah,
So who's to say cases like this won't happen again? And just another thing I remember, and I'm just trying to remember the article, but I remember I think it was Jesse Garrett, one of the black magicians that I spoke to, and he told me that he has Saudi billionaires as his clients who speak to him regularly, and he claimed that part of the reason they're so rich is because they do this stuff and they communicate to these demons. Now, people listening will think that, you know, well, these guys smoking something like this, you know, this is ridiculous. But the reality is there's people out there willing to spend good money on talking to demon summoners. They really do believe it's making a difference in their lives, and I think that in itself is really fascinating. That this type of stuff is going on, and a lot of people, you know, think it's confined to a movie like Hereditary, but actually it's happening in their communities as we speak.
I think this is your guy right here, J.S. Garrett. You can
Yes,
have a
just
reverse baptism,
crazy
freedom from
stuff.
right hand religions. Were you forced into an oppressive religion without your consent? Oh my God.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the article actually. I just forgot this picture of Eric coating, and he sat like in a kind of bucket with blood all over him. That goes back to what I said to you before about him being very theatrical, and just I got that sense speaking to him that he thought that he was a character in a Saw movie. Like it was like,
Right.
but the other guys I spoke to, like I say, they felt quite credible. They spoke to me just like they were a therapist, like, or they were just like an everyday therapist. Like they didn't create a distinction, you know, and that's what was really interesting. That people were telling me this stuff lucidly. They were talking to me. It was as everyday as making toast in the morning, but but speaking to a demon to them. And I think that that's maybe why this article's made such an impression, because people can't quite believe the lucidity that people talk about this stuff with in the article.
Yeah, they do it. I mean, this is all real stuff, man. This is like,
Mm.
and how many of these crimes have they done and not caught somebody is another question. Like they're happening. These kind of weird crimes are happening worldwide.
Yeah,
Something else.
yeah, and I wonder if their rates have gone up, because I remember Coating told me he charged $300 for a private one-on-one Skype meeting, and that was like an hourly rate, I believe. I wonder if with the recession, maybe the prices have gone up. Who knows? But
Recession and inflation. Let's see if he's got his prices up. You can talk. It's
yeah,
still out there. Let's see.
exactly. Even
I've priced it at only $2.79 for 60 minutes.
yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy. Even Payman and Bezelbub were affected by the
Yeah.
recession.
There's an 11% discount. The number of magic. There you go. Godlike power, comma EA quitting. Here's your chance. Skype.
Yeah,
You
it's
can have your
interesting.
powerful discussion over Skype.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, I do feel like sometimes, as long as what people are doing isn't causing harm, I'm very much of the mindset of let people get on with it. But I guess the dark side to this is there is evidence, as you said, of this causing real life devastation and real life violence. So,
This is
you know,
just the
there's a
stuff
real
we know about. This is all the stuff we know about, Thomas. Like, what's
yeah,
other stuff? They shut down his Facebook and Instagram. I wonder if he got him back. But he was like,
yeah.
YouTube was shut down. So
But do you know what? I saw him actually turn up as a talking head on a few documentaries. There was, I don't know if you've heard of like the horror channel Shudder. Have you heard of that? Shudder,
no,
and
what's that?
it's like a horror movie sort of streaming service. And they had this documentary series called Cursed Movies, and it was about like famously the Omen was supposed to be cursed, the set of the Omen, and loads of things went wrong and all this type of stuff. Well, there was one episode, I can't remember if it was about The Exorcist, it might have been, and I'm pretty sure he turned up as a talking head. So he had managed to sort of get a bit of mainstream approval off the back of this article, which I found really interesting. I don't know, like I think logically I'm more inclined to believe the demon summoners who do it without also being big media personalities.
They need to sell more hourly consultations, so they have to get out there. They got to. What
Yeah,
was
that's true.
so some kind of was it a documentary he was in?
Yeah, I think it was called Cursed Movies, Cursed Films. It was called. I can't remember the episode, but I remember him turning up and being like, "Shit, there he is, there he is." So, but yeah, like I guess I'd just say also with this article, I think it's just a good example of um, thinking outside the box a little, and like I said, I was just sat smoking a joint, watching Hereditary, and the idea came, and I think it just shows to other writers out there that you know any idea that comes in your head isn't stupid. Just 10 minutes on Google going down a rabbit hole, before long you can find an entire sub community of people that actually exist, and that's what happened. I found this community, and it was like Hereditary didn't seem like a horror movie anymore. It seemed more like a documentary.
Right. It's interesting that the BBC says this is far right links. It's really he just got involved in Satanism. They interpret it as far right, but it was really
That's
in it for
interesting.
money. Yeah, it's a miscarriage. This is his
Yeah.
pact. This I don't know if you've seen this, but this is Daniel's pact with King Lucifuge, Rosafal,
Mm,
to win the
I'm not
Mega Millions
surprised.
super jackpot, receive fruitful rewards. And then here's his thing: to
Mm,
never be suspected of any crimes by the police, and also that the police will never know of any crimes that I've done and that I will do. So maybe he's been involved in other crimes. This is his
yeah,
blood oath
yeah.
right here: sacrifice only women. So
I've,
those murders were sacrifices in his mind.
it's horrible. It's horrible. But I would just draw people to what Douglas James Davis, one of the professors I spoke to for the piece, said. I think he said when you're going through something and you're in desperate need of help, the idea of talking to Lilith or Beelzebub can be very romantic. When you are very vulnerable, maybe this can be a romantic thing, and these people can kind of be used and they can be manipulated, and that's the dark side to all of this. I would say, if people are going through significant issues in their life, see a real medical professional before seeking out these communities, because as you've pointed out, there's lots of evidence of it resulting in real life violence and real life issues. I don't think if I'm just going to be honest with you, I didn't quite realize the full scope of that at the time I was writing this. But in the years since, I have, and I guess I'm just glad that my article had the balance in there, and it did show, you know, that this has real potential for harm.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, this is very dark stuff. This guy has sigil magic. He would like the bodies were intertwined as if laid out as a sacrifice in the undergrowth of Friend Country Park in Wembley.
Yeah,
Really
crazy.
dark. Like there's
Absolutely
video
crazy.
of this guy. He tried to get out of it by acting insane or something, but the court wasn't buying it. He
Yeah,
apparently
yeah,
considered
yeah.
himself an Aryan. That's really weird.
And I guess what's interesting is as society becomes more and more desperate, as we live through cost of living crises and we live through the potential for war, people historically have turned to the dark arts. They've turned to the occult more fervently, and I feel like right now, I mean, it's bleak out there. It's bleak in America with all these tariffs and people not being able to even afford to buy a crate of eggs. You know, over here in the UK, it's the same thing. You know, a lot of people
Thomas, I
struggling to
just
do their week shop.
literally I was at the market and I spent $10 on 12 eggs. I'm not kidding.
It's crazy. I remember growing up, man, and I remember it was a big thing for people to egg people's houses as a joke. Now it'd be like, nah, I'm not fucking smashing that egg. I'm keeping it going. But I guess my point is, I wouldn't be surprised if these types of communities have imploded exploded since. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, you know, quadruple the amount. And everything you're saying suggests that there is. I think in dark times people turn to dark arts, and that, you know, that's what the main point of this article was, to show that and uncover it a little bit.
I think that's true. And you'll see that if you look at the 60s, this like dislocation, assassinations, war, Vietnam War in the States, people were into all these cult type stuffs. This was their thing.
Yeah.
This was their way out. Hippie dumb
Yeah.
and Manson type stuff, process.
Yeah.
Those are just the tip of the iceberg.
100%, 100%. And I'm sure when I was researching the Manson family, because this article never came out, but a few years ago I was trying to write about the Manson family, and I can't remember who it was. I forget her name. She was one of the family that was still in prison. She got released. Not Susan Atkins. She died a long time ago.
Krenwinkel, or I don't remember the girls' names.
Yeah, sorry, my brain.
I think Kasabian was one who didn't go to jail.
Leslie Van Houten. That was it. Yeah. I had a line into Leslie Van Houten, and I tried to interview her. I got turned down, but I got close. And through the research of that piece, which ultimately never came out, you know, I learned that the Manson family were supposedly communicating with specific ancient demons. So yeah, this stuff's been going on for a long time. I just feel like right now it's become more and more normalized. Like all you need is $250, and these guys will claim that they'll introduce you, and that's just a crazy idea. You know, that would have seemed fantastical to me 10 years ago, but now it's actually normal for some people, and that's a crazy thought. That's a crazy thought.
It is a crazy thought. That's a good way to end it. Thomas, we are at the 40-minute mark. Is there anything you'd like to add, or anything?
No, I guess
what you're working on, where they can find you.
Yeah, sure thing. So you can find me on Twitter, or X, if you want to call it that, under the tag T Hobbs, so THOBBS Journo, JOURNO. Yeah, as I said, I'm a writer from a working class background. Makes me a rarity in this industry. I'm always trying to think outside the box. Some of the big pieces I've got coming up, I've got a profile with Robbie Krieger, the lead guitarist of The Doors, long read profile about to go live, which I'm really proud of. Also got a long read coming for the BBC, all about Tupac's song Dear Mama. Both very different to Demonic Spirits, but I hope that when you read them, you see they've got the same level of detail and balance. Yeah, but I really appreciate you having me on, and yeah, I hope the readers dig the article as well.
Yeah, I'll put a link to the article and a link to your social media. And again, the title of the article we talked about today is Searching for Mindfulness Among Satanic Spirits. And the author is Thomas Hobbs, Hobbs. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a good week.
All right, you too.